I wanted to make this podcast right here. I'm recording this right now to kind of compare and contrast what I noticed about being in the official. I don't even want to give them any undue respect. I want to give them all due respect, but I don't want to give them any undue respect. But the traditional medical establishment, they had their way of doing things, and Dr. Ben Edwards and his team and his colleagues had their way of doing things. And there was a stark difference between the two. And that's what I want to talk to y'all about today. The stark difference between how the medical establishment treated this measles outbreak and how real Texas doctor, a family physician, how he and his team handled measles.
My uncles and aunties was right here. I looked away. Now only in the mirror I can see their face. We hope 2, 3, exit at the right stage. The people clap, the camera cuts, now we fade into darkness, footsteps.
Well, all right. You heard that homemade hip hop introductory music. So, of course, you know by now that it is time to Focus LBK. Welcome to episode 80 of the Focus LBK show. This is Robert Jenkins, your humble host. And today's episode, we are going to talk about what I observed during the recent measles outbreak down in Seminole in Gaines County, Seminole, Texas. So I will say off the beginning, here at the outset, that I had the opportunity to attend the medical conference over at Covenant. And so I got I was there firsthand to see what the doctors talked about and what they mentioned regarding the measles patient that they had there, the one who passed away, unfortunately. And, you know, I will say that I made a special effort to be there. I wanted to be there. And I asked a few questions when I was there. And the reason I wanted to be there at that news conference, or that press conference, that presser as they call it, is simply because I have been immensely interested in vaccines and related issues for probably 15, getting close to 20 years now. And I'll say at the outset too, I'm not a doctor, obviously. Nothing on this show constitutes any kind of medical advice, but I will say that I'm a very interested layperson who has studied the issue quite a bit and is familiar with the terminology and familiar with some of the trends when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to related issues. It's just something I'm immensely interested in. So I made a purposeful effort to go to that news conference because I wanted to see exactly what was going on and hear firsthand what was being said. I will also tell you right here at the outset that I had the great fortune, the blessing to be able to go down to Seminole in Gaines County. They like to say it like that on the news. Went down to old Seminole and mixed and mingled and visited with some of the measles patients down there. In fact, I had a chance to be a part of a film crew for a documentary or for a film that's being made. And I don't want to go too far into that, but needless to say, I have firsthand experience and observations that I took away from that situation. So we had a couple of local doctors, in this case, one specific local doctor, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ben Edwards, who is the founder of Veritas Wellness. And I'll tell you right now, he is my family doctor. We go to his clinic. We're members at his clinic. And I heard that he was going to be filming a documentary or a film of some sort down there. And of course, you guys know that I'm a videographer. And so I wanted to go. I wanted to be a part of that because I believe in his mission. I believe in his style of doctoring. And I wanted to make this podcast right here. I'm recording this right now to kind of compare and contrast what I noticed about being in the official. I don't even want to give them any undue respect. I want to give them all due respect, but I don't want to give them any undue respect. But the traditional medical establishment, they had their way of doing things, and Dr. Ben Edwards and his team and his colleagues had their way of doing things. And there was a stark difference between the two. And that's what I want to talk to y'all about today. The stark difference between how the medical establishment treated this measles outbreak and how an humble, I don't even say humble, I say humble. You know, I'm from Texas. I say humble. How a humble, real Texas doctor, a family physician, how he and his team handled measles. A godly man who has taken his mission as a doctor seriously, but yet with humility, it seemed to me. You know what I'm saying? There was a stark difference between the two. So I'm not going to beat around the bush too much. I'm just going to get into it. Now, keep in mind, I ain't no doctor. This ain't medical advice. This ain't none of that stuff right there. Don't even go there with me, because I ain't going there with you. You know what I'm saying? I was at both. I saw some portion of the official response, and I saw some portion of the response that I think was more convincing and more godly and more effective. And that is the holistic approach that was undertaken by Dr. Ben Edwards and his team and his colleagues, because it's not just Veritas Wellness. There's Children's Health Defense, which is Robert F. Kennedy's organization. There's a network of doctors, in other words, who operate kind of on a more humble, more down to earth, more Christ-like, Christ-centered, Christ-focused paradigm or method of operation. Modus operandi is totally different. And so I'm just here to tell you about those differences that I noticed. So let's talk about these differences real succinctly. I don't want to go too long, but I do want to tell you everything that I saw. This is the main dichotomy. The main thing that I saw, the split, was between fear-based medical security complex. But that's how I would characterize it. Ain't nobody saying that. I'm saying that. That's what I saw. It was a fear-based medical security complex. And then there was a humble, traditional physician, family doctor who feels that medicine is his mission type of approach. Starkly different. All right, so check it out. We've already said that there was a fear-based approach and what I would call a humble, godly approach. The fear-based approach was what I observed in the medical establishment. So at that press conference that took place at Covenant, the speakers mentioned that the way they approached the patients was like something like, okay, we've got a triage to where they come up, and if they got measles symptoms, they stay in the car. And we come out with personal protective equipment. And by that, they meant N95 masks, which, I'm sorry, from what I've understood and looking at the issue, don't stop viruses, because viruses are microscopic. And viruses are so small, we really can't see them well. They'll show you electron microscope images of viruses, and there's some questions about that. I ain't going to get into that. That's a whole other thing. The imaging of viruses and exosomes, whether there's viruses and exosomes and all. I'm not going to get into that. So what we saw in the medical security, what I'm calling the medical security based response, personal protective equipment, isolating people. They were telling people, stay in the car. We'll come out to you with a mask and a face mask and all that, shield and stuff and gloves. Well, the opposite side of that, the godly, mission-driven physician, community physician, family physician, Dr. Ben Edwards, for example, when I observed him, was down there sitting face to face at the makeshift clinic in Seminole, I'm talking about face to like this, like shining lights in their eyes and checking their mouth and the ears, heartbeat, face to face, 6 inches away. There was one lady, there was at least one lady, one family that I'm familiar with, that I overheard and listened to and had an opportunity to be a witness to their story. said that they were basically escorted from the hospital by security when they went in, when they mentioned the word measles. Now, I don't know which hospital this was. This was not, I don't think, Covenant here in Lubbock. This was another hospital. But when they said something about measles, they escorted them out. And come to find out, the guy that was there that they escorted out was the uncle, I think, of one of the patients. He didn't have measles. He was vaccinated. He was just there to bring some clothes to the patient and the family that was there. They didn't even, as soon as they heard measles, it was like, oh, you get out of here. No, get back, get out. And it stood in stark contrast to Dr. Ben Edwards, Dr. Brian Hooker, who was with Children's Health Defense, Tina Siemens, Jamie Winship, Donna Winship, the people that were down there in Seminole. They were right there and it wasn't a clinic. It was a building, a business that was being built, but they needed a clinic. They needed space. So it was donated by the owners of that business to be a clinic. And all of those individuals that I just mentioned were there face to face. So you see, when you operate in medicine based on fear and force and coercion, you get a certain type of response from the medical establishment. Be afraid. It's going to get you. It's going to kill you. Even though it's just measles, which was up until 1963, folks, there was no vaccine for measles. And look, I was reading some stuff the other day. It said that the official records say there were 400,000 cases of measles a year. But they said there was a note that said actually it was probably 4 million cases a year because everybody in the birth cohort, meaning every child born every year prior to 1963, got measles. My understanding of reading these graphs. So you had 4 million kids born that year. All 4 million of them was exposed to measles. And the vast majority of them lived because I think the death rate was one death in 500,000 cases before the vaccine. Which, if you did the math correctly, I think it boils down to like 650 deaths from measles a year in the whole country before the vaccine. So in other words, measles back in the day was when people were much more rational and I think just had a little more perspective. Measles was considered to be a childhood illness. You got it. It was chickenpox. You got measles. You got mumps. And when you get those diseases, my understanding, I'm not a doctor, I just kind of read a little bit, but my understanding is the latest research is showing when you get those childhood diseases, you actually get benefits later on in life regarding not getting cancer of certain sorts, being a harder target for cancer to hit. They activate your immune system in certain ways that vaccines never can. Then again, I'm like I say, I'm just a podcaster. What do I know? I'm just a guy that reads a little bit. But there was a stark difference that I noticed. So you got people over here in the medical establishment segregating customers. There was one gentleman who told the story down in Seminole of when they came in, they put them in a certain room and they wouldn't let the kid eat or drink. And I can't remember if this was the child that passed away or if this is a sibling of the child that passed away, but they wouldn't let him eat or drink. And then when the life flight came, they brought him to Lubbock and they were like, wait a minute, they didn't let you eat or drink? Why not? That's not medically indicated with measles. So they starved this kid for 9 hours or something like that, not letting him eat or drink. And that's not even part of the treatment protocol. Soon as the life flight captain picked him up, the pilot of the life flight helicopter picked him up. He was like, what? Oh no, we'll get you some of that. And he got him. He kept his word and got him some of that. Got him some, I think she wanted chocolate cereal. What she want, some Count Chocula, something like that. But you see what I'm saying? They starving the poor kid over here because they got measles. For no reason. It's not even medically indicated. You know what? On the other side is what I would call holistic observational medicine by trained, brave, humble, frontline doctors. They they seem to be doing things that save lives. And I'll give you a prime example of what I meant. If you look at that news conference at Covenant, the doctors mentioned that, first of all, I asked a few questions when I was there. I said, what did the patient who passed away, did they have any comorbidities? Can't answer that. HIPAA. Okay. I figured, but I had to ask anyway. I said, what was their age and what was their gender? What was their sex? Can't answer that. HIPAA. I don't understand. I thought HIPAA was about not identifying the patient. You can't identify a patient by telling if they had comorbidities, right? I don't think you can. I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know. I just thought like, oh, figures. They won't tell you nothing about the patient. But they did say that part of the treatment mainly involved making them comfortable. They gave them Tylenol or something like that for fevers. They gave them oxygen, assuming some kind of oxygen mask or tube to help them breathe. And that patient passed away. They didn't get into much more specific information, so I don't know exactly what they did, but we do know the outcome of what they did. And yet we also know that on the holistic, down-to-earth, grounded, Christ-centered medical doctors, they actually implemented cures on the first line of defense. They weren't out there making you comfortable. They were treating your disease symptoms. You know what one of the treatments was? Vitamin A, which is found abundantly in good quality cod liver oil. So I went down there. I was down there in Seminole. Before I went checking my doctor's own podcast out, I realized, okay, I need to be taking me some cod liver oil. So I went up there and bought me some from Veritas Wellness Clinic, Merck store next door. And I started loading up on my cod liver oil, which is vitamin A, which if you'll look at the You Are the Cure podcast, Dr. Ben, not his opinion, he's quoting the medical literature going back hundreds of years, or at least decades. And the medical literature says if you have a certain amount of good vitamin A in your system, measles, you will get over measles. Now, you know, hospitals, do they give vitamin A? I don't know. Doubt it. They didn't mention it. I know one thing, you in a hospital for heart failure and all kind of ailments, they be giving you cheeseburgers and hospital food, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like if they don't understand the importance of nutrition, do they understand the importance of vitamins? I don't know. Just my opinion. I'm just a podcaster here, folks. Just telling you what I observed, mixed and mingled with a little bit of my life experience and a little bit of stuff that I've read and listened to from experts. You know what I'm saying? Another thing I want to touch on, we're talking about the treatments that they got. Basically, in the hospital, they made the patient comfortable. They gave them some Tylenol or something similar to control the fever, and they gave them oxygen masks and treatments of some sort. I didn't hear them say anything about budesonide. Have you ever heard of budesonide? I had never heard of budesonide, and I kind of read this stuff and studied a little bit. Well, apparently, there is a doctor whose name escapes me at the moment, who is a good friend of Dr. Ben Edwards, who discovered during COVID that budesonide knocks all that swelling from your pneumonia out. Because a lot of times you ain't dying from, for example, the patient who passed away from measles, supposedly, did not pass away from measles. They passed away from a secondary pneumonia infection. According to Dr. Edwards and others who have been treating successfully these very same patients who have been in the ICU and everything else, you give them some budesonide, it's an inhaler, that knocks that swelling out, enables you to breathe freely. There were documented cases where these kids and others who were in ICU with 70 oxygen levels. You're supposed to have a 90-something oxygen level to be normal. They down at 70. That's emergency room stuff. They're in ICU. They give them budesonide. They're released the next day. They at home the next day for lunch, dinner or something. You know what I'm saying? I never heard of budesonide. And apparently none of the people in the medical establishment or none of the ones that were involved had ever heard of it. See, budesonide is one of those frontline treatments that attentive, smart doctors who are actually trying to help you come up with, like hydroxychloroquine, for example. Like ivermectin, for example, the stuff that actually was helping people in COVID. That's when budesonide was first discovered. I wish I knew this gentleman's name off the top of my head. I thought I had it in my notes. I don't see it. This doctor that I think was the one who discovered that budesonide just really helps. Just brings you right out the woods, apparently, from what I heard. I heard parent after parent down in Seminole say that these treatments that they gave them, they gave their children, got them right out the ICU 10, 15, 12 hours later. One day you in the ICU, next morning they like, oh yeah, I think you can go home now. Fathers and mothers who have children at home who are apparently not far from death's door. Dr. Ben makes house calls, and his cohorts and his colleagues making house calls, giving them budesonide, vitamin A, and get this, praying over them, holistic health, praying over them, and then giving them budesonide and vitamin A. Next morning, a few hours later, the kid is sitting up hungry. It's testimony I heard with my own ears. You want to know what else I heard with my own ears? We're talking about fear-based medicine versus holistic, outcome, health-based approach. I heard with my own ears the families involved, the actual families with sick children, talking about how vaccination status didn't matter. There was families, over and over again, I heard about this and saw this. There were families where the mom was vaccinated and boosted. The kids were not vaccinated, and the dad was not vaccinated. The kids got measles in succession, rapid succession, one after another. The mom got it, who was vaccinated and boosted, and the dad, who wasn't vaccinated, didn't get it. Clearly, if you listen to as many different variations of that story as I did, you have to start coming to the conclusion that the vaccine is wearing off or it's ineffective. There were people who were vaccinated out the wazoo, that's a scientific term, that got it. There's people that ain't ever had a vaccine that didn't get it. There are cases, by the way, as I understand it, in the medical literature, the vaccine itself causes measles, and the vaccine itself can cause you to shed measles and give it to other people, and the vaccine itself can kill you. I think there was like 40 cases since 2015 of documented cases in the vaccine adverse event reporting system. Don't quote me on that, because I'm trying to syncretize a lot of information that I've gleaned over the last few weeks. But several dozen people since 2015 or so have died, documented by the CDC in the vaccine adverse reporting system, the VAERS system, died from the measles vaccine. And that's the dirty little secret that I noticed, that the medical industrial security complex, or whatever you want to call them, they don't like to touch that at all. It is a documented fact that vaccines can and do have extremely negative, life-altering, if not life-ending consequences. But they never tell you that. On the other hand, some of these more godly, down-to-earth, honest doctors, that's my characterization, I'm biased, but they acknowledge and admit and counsel their patients that, hey, vaccination is up to you, because just like every other medical intervention, there are risks and benefits associated with being vaccinated or getting a vaccine. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth getting a vaccine for something like measles or flu, which typically don't kill you, when the vaccine itself can have a fairly high rate of severely maiming or killing you? You have to balance that out. That's a real question there. That's called being an adult. Nobody out there will go buy a car without doing some research on it. You won't even buy a washing machine without doing all kind of research on it. But vaccines, you ain't supposed to do no research. You're supposed to just accept somebody's word and, oh, no, it's cool. Nah. Dude, vaccines are putting unknown chemicals into your delicate, although powerfully made body. And I'm not going to get into too deep on the what they contain and how it works on you. Because like I say, first of all, I'm not a doctor. Anything I tell you is just something that I've learned by reading or listening to medical experts on podcasts. So I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to reinforce the point that I made, which is vaccination status. Yes, most of the people that got sick seem to be unvaccinated, but a good proportion of the people who got sick were totally vaccinated. So you have to really ask the question, and what's the point then? And let me make this supremely important point. The families down there, the Mennonite families, most of the people down there I think that were affected were Mennonite, many if not most. These are not uneducated religious zealots down there handling snakes. These are actually salt of the earth, quiet, humble people making a living humbly in a God-pleasing way as they can, and in as God-pleasing a way as they can down there in Seminole. And everyone that I talked to or listened to or witnessed their testimony was knowledgeable, competent, and intelligent. Most of the people who refuse vaccines, especially in this Mennonite community, are people who have seen firsthand the supremely detrimental negative effects that vaccination can sometimes have. There were families down there who, okay, so I think I heard someone say there's about 7,500 people in that community down there. And out of 7,500 people, they have around 14 severely vaccine damaged individuals. And they're close knit. So when something happens, they talk to each other. They see each other at church. They interact with each other every day in the community. So someone's son or daughter takes a vaccine one day and the next day is not the same ever for the rest of their life. That gets around quickly. And people get a little bit afraid. They get a little bit of cautious. And then what happens is, I can tell you from personal experience, when you have something like that happen to you, you start understanding that this is incumbent on me to do this research. This is incumbent on me to read these books. This is my responsibility now that we've seen what can happen. So in other words, these people aren't anti-vaxxers. That's a pejorative term, by the way. Pejorative meaning it's a slur. It's a term. It's a dirty trick. It's propaganda. It's meant to make you think these people are uneducated hicks and zealots handling snakes, like I said. That's farthest thing from the truth. When you have a term like anti-vaxxers, that has been thought up somewhere by some marketing team or some propaganda expert who has deployed that. That is weaponized language. These people were not anti-vaxxers. They were people who witnessed some severe negative impacts of vaccination and who learned about it and made a decision not to do it in some cases, because some of them have some vaccines and not others. It's just completely dishonest too, by the way, to sling around terminology like anti-vaxxers, because I guarantee most of the people out there that just willingly go get vaccines over and over again repeatedly have never done any research on them. And they don't know that there are databases that show how many vaccine injuries occur every year. By the way, when you look at that database called VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, that database only gives you about 1% of total vaccine injuries. Until COVID, most doctors didn't even know they were supposed to. You're supposed to mandatorily, it's not mandatory, but you're supposed to enter every vaccine injury into VAERS. Well, most doctors are trained that vaccines don't injure you or can't injure you. They don't even know what it looks like. So that right there tells you why there's only 1% or so of the actual injuries in VAERS, because doctors don't even look for it, don't even know what it is. Told it doesn't exist. Well, these people in this community down here in Seminole know firsthand that vaccine injuries occur. And that's one reason why they're hesitant to be vaccinated. Another reason is because going back to how they were treated by the medical establishment. The word gets around quickly. I heard this many times when I was down there. The word gets around quickly in this community. So when you go to the hospital and they treat you like trash, and I don't think it was Covenant here in Lubbock. And matter of fact, I got the distinct impression there was another hospital, but they were treated like lepers, like they had bubonic plague or something. They were treated terribly, not like patients in need. So when they got that negative treatment and that, well, man, you just have to hear some of the stories. I'm sure these videos that we filmed, I'm sure they'll be coming out. You just got to hear some of the stuff. When you get treated like that, you go home and you tell your friends and your neighbors and your family. And they say, well, I ain't going up there then. They ain't gonna call security and escort me out. They ain't gonna treat me like trash. I ain't gonna give them the opportunity. Right? That's what anybody would say. So that was another reason that these people are adverse or hesitant, rather, to even engage with the medical community. As if COVID didn't show you enough. Then right on the heels of COVID, this was the 5th anniversary of the March lockdowns recently, we get this thing breaking out. And it tells me that there is a good part of the medical establishment in this country, a good part of the medical establishment here didn't learn anything from COVID. They're still using that fear-based model. There's invisible enemies out there, these viruses, they coming to get you. You better get this vaccine. And if you don't, it's going to be negative consequences for you. That is diametrically opposed, the diametrical opposite of what I saw with Dr. Ben Edwards and the CHD, Children's Health Defense Team. There's a whole network of affiliated doctors. They did the opposite of what the medical security industrial complex did. They actually cured people face to face without fear of getting measles. Dr. Edwards, my doctor, got measles. And I think I heard him say he was vaccinated when he was a kid. Don't quote me on that, because I took in a lot of information that weekend, but I think he said he was vaccinated. I think he was saying in medical school you have to be up to date on your vaccinations. Okay, so that's something to consider. So the bottom line is this. It seems to me, LBK, that with all the lessons that we could have and should have learned from COVID, there's some part of the medical establishment did not learn those lessons. And it also seems to me, I'm a historian. You look at World War II, everybody likes to talk about some of the atrocities that happened in World War II, but claim that it could never happen with them or they would never do something like that. And I say, no, I think some people would, because they have not learned the lesson from World War II nor from COVID that, hey, you cannot discriminate or treat people differently just because they might be part of a small religious community, a religious minority. You can't treat them different. You can't treat people different because they have a different opinion about medical treatments than you do. And by the way, if you have so much faith in your version of medical treatments, then why are you worried about catching something from somebody that don't subscribe to that? Put a fine point on it. If you so vaccinated, why are you worried about somebody not being vaccinated? Don't your vaccine work? That's like saying, you got to put a bulletproof vest on. I got my bulletproof vest on, but it ain't going to work if you ain't got yours on. Well, the first question I'm going to ask is, bulletproof vest, is there somebody shooting? Who's walking around shooting people? Why you got a bulletproof vest on? And second of all, what does the effectiveness of your bulletproof vest have to do with mine? That's the logic behind the way these people act. That's the question that you should ask. Well, you're going to infect my whole hospital. One doctor told one of these parents from Seminole, I ain't going to put you in another room. Why? So you can infect my whole staff? Well, isn't the rest of your staff vaccinated? See what I'm saying? They learned nothing from COVID. Some of these people, some of these individuals and institutions didn't learn anything from COVID. Probably won't learn anything from this. I tell you what I learned. I learned A, I'm in the right medical clinic. B, my health, as Dr. Edwards always teaches, is up to me. With the right amount of exercise and vitamin A and sunlight exposure and proper nutrition and hydration, measles is at best a temporary setback, should be. Always has been up until now. I don't know what changed, if anything. So your health is in your hands, folks. And that's another thing I learned is I've been walking, I've been doing some working out walking an hour a day, fixing to start throwing some weightlifting in there, trying to drink more water with a little bit of mineral salt, real salt added to the water because it replenishes the minerals that your body needs. These are things that I'm learning. I'm like, yo, I do not ever want to have to go to a hospital with none of these regular old doctors. Because from what I've seen, I would just say godly healthcare, focus on actually helping you get better while honoring your wishes and your desires, is not necessarily at the forefront of their mind or their treatment program. I would advise you to find a good doctor who does treat you that way, with respect and the humility. See, when you have what's that Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility? Doctors have great power. They have a great responsibility not to be fear mongers. They have a great responsibility not to guilt and shame you into doing things that they want you to do that you don't want to do. I run away from doctors who I've been to 2 or 3, 4 doctors in my lifetime where they use their white coat status, the white coat on, a stethoscope, to scare you and try to make you do stuff. And I'm like, hey, as soon as you do that to me, I'm out. Fear is the mind killer, and people that use fear to control you are not operating in a godly fashion. Now, you do need somebody to tell you the truth in a loving, kind, professional manner. I ain't saying they shouldn't tell you, hey, you need to do this now and do this now and take this now. It could be a pharmaceutical product. Sometimes you need to take something now. Doctors should tell you that. I don't know how many times I've looked at it. You go to a doctor and they be like, you 80 pounds overweight and got all these issues, and they don't even tell you to lose weight. They tell you take these drugs. I know I need to lose weight. So I ain't talking about nobody out there. I'm talking to me. You understand what I'm saying? But that's what I'm talking about. When you have a good doctor, they tell you the truth. They don't scare you into stuff. They honor your wishes, and they operate in a humble fashion to first do no harm and second try to cure you according to your wishes. And that right there, I think, is what you call good doctoring. Let me know if you agree down here in the comment section. Let me know if you disagree. Let's have a good conversation about it. That's what our mission here is at the Focus LBK show, is to elevate the conversation in the community. This is your brother, Robert Jenkins. I'm signing off. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
And 80s was right here. I looked away. Now only in the mirror I can see their face. We hope 2, 3, exit at the right stage. The people clap, the camera cuts, now we fade. Into darkness, footsteps in the